The Australian Outback in 1890 stretched endlessly like a canvas painted in rust and gold, where the earth cracked beneath an unforgiving sun and the horizon shimmered with promises that might never come. Hey, in this vast wilderness where civilization felt more like a whispered rumor than reality, the silence held weight, pressing down on everything with the authority of eternity itself. Anna Dubois moved through this landscape like a figure from another world, her long dark hair pinned carefully despite the heat, her simple cotton dress already showing the dust that would never truly wash clean. At 35, she carried herself with the quiet dignity of someone who had chosen purpose over comfort, duty over desire. Every morning for the past 3 years, she had walked the same dusty path to the well, carrying 2 wooden buckets that had become extensions of her arms. The village of Millfield sat like a collection of weathered bones against the red earth, a dozen buildings clustered around hope and stubbornness in equal measure. The general store, the tiny church where Anna taught reading to anyone who would come, the pub where miners and stockmen gathered to forget their troubles in amber liquid and stories that grew taller with each telling. It was a place where people came to disappear or to find something they'd lost elsewhere. This particular morning, the air tasted of endings. Anna's departure for Papua New Guinea loomed just 2 weeks away. Another mission, another calling to spread literacy and learning among people who had never seen a book. Her superiors had been clear. Her work here was finished. The local children could read basic words now, and that was enough for a place like this. She paused at the well, setting down her buckets with a soft thud that seemed to echo in the morning stillness. The rope felt familiar in her hands as she lowered the bucket into darkness, listening for the distant splash that would tell her the water level. It was then that she heard it, a sound that didn't belong in her ordered world of morning routines and predictable solitude. The shuffle of feet, the soft clank of metal against metal. Anna turned slowly, her heart suddenly loud in her ears, and there he was, a man emerging from behind a cluster of ghost gums like something conjured from the heat itself. But it was the chains that stopped her breath. Heavy iron shackles around his wrists, connected by links that had worn grooves into his sun-darkened skin. His clothes hung in tatters. His dark hair was matted with dust and sweat, and exhaustion radiated from every line of his body. But his eyes were what made Anna forget to be afraid. They were the deep gray blue of storm clouds over water, and they held something she had never seen in the faces of truly desperate men, a clarity that seemed incapable of deception. When he looked at her, she saw not menace or calculation, but a kind of quiet respect that made her stand straighter. "Water," he said, his voice rough with thirst but gentle in its asking. "Please." Anna looked at him. The stranger in chains who said please like it still mattered, whose eyes held no shadows of lies, and felt something shift in the carefully constructed world she had built around duty and departure. She reached for the bucket she had just drawn up, her hands steady despite the questions flooding her mind. The Outback had a way of presenting you with exactly what you never expected, and always at the moment when you thought your path was set in stone. As she offered water to a man who wore chains like jewelry and spoke truth with his eyes, Anna couldn't know that this moment would become the hinge upon which her entire future would turn. The dust settled around them in the morning light, and somewhere in the distance, a kookaburra called, perhaps laughing at the beautiful complexity of human hearts, or perhaps celebrating the mysterious ways that love finds us when we least expect it and most need it. Before we continue with Anna's story, I'd love to know, have you ever had a moment that completely changed your perspective on your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that explore the beautiful complexity of the human heart. Chapter 1. The Weight of Noble Choices. 3 years earlier, Anna Dubois had stood in the marble-floored parlor of a family chateau outside Lyon, France, her hands folded carefully in front of her while her father explained her future as if discussing the weather. The man they had chosen for her, Monsieur Henri Beaumont, was perfect on paper, wealthy, titled, appropriately aged at 42, and completely uninterested in Anna's anything more than a well-bred ornament for his social aspirations. Anna had listened to the arrangement with the same calm attention she brought to everything else. Her fluency in French, English, German, Italian, and Latin proving useful as she formulated her response in each language before settling on the most diplomatic French. Non, papa. I choose a different path. Her father had sputtered about duty and family honor, but Anna had already been corresponding with the Australian Presbyterian Mission Society, while other young women her age were learning to paint watercolors and play parlor songs. Anna had been devouring books on pedagogy and linguistics, dreaming of places where literacy could mean the difference between oppression and freedom. Now, as she watched the stranger drink deeply from a bucket, Anna wondered if all those years of choosing purpose over pleasure had prepared her for this moment, when every instinct told her to help someone she should probably fear. The man's name, he told her quietly, was Jim Sullivan, 40 years old, born in County Cork before his family fled to Australia when he was 12. He had the calloused hands of someone who worked with tools and wood, and when he spoke about the landscape around them, Anna heard the affection of someone who truly understood this harsh country. "I'm not what you might think," he said, setting down the empty bucket with careful deliberation. The chains around his wrists caught the morning light. "But I suppose that's what they all say." Anna studied his face, the lines around his eyes that spoke of laughter as much as hardship, the way he held himself despite his obvious exhaustion. "Then tell me what you are." It was a boldness that surprised them both. Anna had spent years perfecting the art of appropriate conversation, but something about this moment, the emptiness of the outback stretching around them, the weight of her own impending departure, made conventional rules seem suddenly irrelevant. Jim's smile was small but genuine. A carpenter, mostly. Sometimes a dreamer. Recently, a man who trusted the wrong people. The story came in careful pieces over the following days. Jim had been working on a government building project in Sydney when money went missing from the foreman's office. Someone needed to take the blame, and the Irish carpenter with no family connections and a reputation for speaking his mind about unfair working conditions made a convenient target. The evidence against him had been circumstantial at best, but in 1890 Australia, that was often enough. Anna found herself returning to the well at the same time each morning, always carrying extra water and whatever food she could spare from her modest provisions. Jim had made himself a shelter in a grove of red gums about a mile from town, close enough to reach if he needed help, far enough away to avoid drawing attention to Anna's assistance. "You shouldn't be doing this," he told her on the third morning, though he made no move to refuse the bread and preserved meat she offered. "If they find out, let me worry about that," Anna replied, surprising herself again with her firmness. "Besides, I'll be leaving soon anyway." Jim looked up from his breakfast. "Leaving? Papua New Guinea. Another mission posting." She said it matter-of-factly, the way she had been saying it for weeks, but somehow the words felt different in the desert air with this man listening. "That's quite a calling," Jim said, and there was something in his voice, not judgment, but a kind of recognition that made Anna look at him more closely. Before she could respond, the sound of horse hooves on the dusty road made them both freeze. Jim melted back into the trees with surprising quiet for a man in chains, while Anna busied herself with filling her buckets as if this were any ordinary morning. Liam Fraser appeared around the bend on his bay mare, his broad shoulders and sun-weathered face making him look like he'd been carved from the outback itself. At 40, he was the closest thing to a Sheriff Millfield had, though his authority came more from respect than any official appointment. Anna had grown to appreciate Liam's straightforward nature and his fierce protection of the town's residents, even if that protection sometimes felt uncomfortably focused on her. "Morning, Anna," Liam said, swinging down from his horse with easy grace. "You're out early again." "The morning is cooler," Anna replied, which was true enough, "and quieter." Liam's green eyes swept the area with the unconscious thoroughness of someone always alert for trouble. His wife Sarah had died in childbirth 2 years ago, leaving him to raise their daughter Emma alone and to battle the bitterness toward the wealthy families who control the town's resources. The same families who had assured him the best doctor would be available for Sarah's delivery, then claimed he was unavoidably detained when the crucial moment came. "Word came from Brisbane yesterday," Liam said, his tone casual but watchful. "They are looking for an escaped convict. Man named Sullivan. Irish. Might be heading this way. Anna kept her expression perfectly neutral. Years of diplomatic training serving her well. How dangerous? That's what I'm trying to figure out, Liam admitted. Official report says theft and assault. But... He paused, running a hand through his brown hair. Something doesn't sit right about it. Too neat. Too convenient. This was what Anna had come to value about Liam. His ability to see past surface explanations to the truth underneath. It was also what made the situation more complicated than she wanted to admit. I'll be careful, she said, lifting her buckets. Anna. Liam's voice stopped her. I know you're leaving soon, but while you're here, if you see anything strange, anyone who doesn't belong, you come to me first. All right. The weight in his words went beyond professional concern, and Anna felt the familiar tug of guilt that came with knowing someone cared for her in ways she couldn't return. Liam had never spoken his feelings aloud, but they lived in the careful way he watched over her, in the small repairs that appeared mysteriously around her cottage, in the way his face changed when she talked about leaving. Of course, she said, meeting his eyes directly. Thank you, Liam. After he rode away, Anna waited a full 10 minutes before returning to the grove where Jim had been hiding. She found him sitting against a tree, his chained hands resting on his knees, his expression thoughtful. Friend of yours? He asked without looking up. He's a good man, Anna said, and meant it. He protects this town. And you? The question hung between them like dust in sunlight. Anna set down her buckets and really looked at Jim, at the way he held himself despite the chains, at the intelligence in his eyes, at the gentleness in his weathered hands. I protect myself, she said finally. Jim smiled at that, a real smile that transformed his whole face. I believe you do. It was in that moment, with the outback stretching endlessly around them, the weight of unspoken truth settling between them like morning dew, that Anna began to understand she was facing a choice she had never prepared for, between the noble calling that had defined her entire adult life and something else entirely. Something that made her heart race in ways that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the dangerous, beautiful possibility of being truly seen by another human being. The kookaburras laughed in the distance, as if they knew something Anna was only beginning to suspect. That the outback had a way of stripping away everything you thought you knew about yourself, leaving only the truth of who you really were underneath all the proper expectations and carefully planned purposes. As she walked back toward town with the water buckets, Anna realized she was no longer counting the days until her departure. Instead, she was beginning to wonder what it would feel like to stay. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Trust. Over the following week, Anna's morning routine evolved into something that felt dangerously like anticipation. She would wake before dawn, dress quickly, and make her way to the well with an awareness of her surroundings that had nothing to do with caution and everything to do with hope. Jim was always there, emerging from the grove like a figure stepping out of the landscape itself, and their conversations began to stretch longer as the trust between them grew stronger. Jim's story unfolded in careful layers, each revelation adding depth to Anna's understanding of the man behind the chains. He had been raised by a mother who cleaned houses for wealthy families in Sydney, and she had insisted he learn to read despite their circumstances. She used to say that words were the only thing they couldn't take away from you, Jim told Anna one morning as they sat in the shade of a massive red gum. Even if they locked you up, even if they chained your hands, your mind could still travel wherever books could take it. Anna felt something shift in her chest at these words. She sounds like a wise woman. She would have liked you, Jim said, then caught himself as if surprised by his own boldness. I mean, she respected education, people who chose to teach others. The slight flush that colored his weathered cheeks made Anna smile. I think I would have liked it too. These moments of connection were punctuated by Jim's wry observations about everything from the local wildlife to Anna's own careful mannerisms. He had a way of teasing that felt like affection rather than mockery, commenting on how she always arranged her skirts just so before sitting down, or how she unconsciously switched between languages when she was thinking hard about something. "There you go again," he said one morning after Anna had muttered something in French under her breath about the stubborn knot in her bootlace. "What?" Cursing in French. Very ladylike. Anna looked up, startled. "I wasn't cursing." "Weren't you?" Jim's eyes held a mischievous glint. "Because I may not speak French, but I recognize the tone of someone calling an inanimate object extremely unflattering names." Despite herself, Anna laughed. A real laugh that seemed to surprise them both. "Fine. I may have suggested that my bootlace was the offspring of unmarried donkeys." "Ah!" Jim nodded solemnly. A very proper French curse indeed. It was during these lighter moments that Anna began to see glimpses of who Jim had been before desperation and false accusations had stripped away so much of his freedom. She saw it in the way he automatically stood whenever she approached, in his careful courtesy despite their unconventional circumstances, in the gentle way he spoke about the Aboriginal people who sometimes passed through the area. "They know this land in ways we never will," he told her one morning after they had seen smoke signals in the distance. Old Billy, he's an elder from a local clan. He used to work sometimes on the construction sites. Man could read weather patterns like you read books. Save more than one crew from flash floods or storms. "You speak about him with great respect," Anna observed. "He gave it first," Jim replied simply. "Treated me like a man worth knowing, not just another Irish troublemaker. That means something." Anna was beginning to understand that Jim's ability to see and honor the dignity in others, was perhaps the strongest evidence of his character. A man who was truly criminal, truly dangerous, would not inspire the kind of quiet respect she was beginning to witness from unexpected sources. It was old Billy himself who provided the most compelling testimony to Jim's nature. Anna encountered the Aboriginal elder one afternoon while returning from a well, her buckets heavy and her mind occupied with thoughts of her approaching departure date, now only 8 days away. Old Billy appeared on the path ahead of her like a figure materializing from the heat itself. He was small and wiry, his dark skin weathered by decades under the Outback sun, his eyes holding the kind of deep wisdom that came from truly understanding one's place in the world. "Mrs. Anna," he said, his voice carrying the careful cadence of someone speaking in a second language. "You helped the chain man." It wasn't a question. Anna felt her heart skip, but something in old Billy's manner, respectful, knowing, without judgment, kept her from denying it. "He's not a bad man," old Billy continued, settling into a comfortable squat beside the path. "Chain man, he helped my grandson 2 seasons back. Boy got caught in flash flood near Sydney. Chain man, he pull boy from water, get him dry clothes, make sure he get home safe. No payment asked. Good heart." Anna set down her buckets, understanding that this moment was important in ways that went beyond simple conversation. "You're sure it was the same man?" "Same eyes," old Billy said with certainty. "Eyes don't lie, even when mouth must stay quiet. Chain man, he got honest eyes. Like you, Mrs. Anna." The weight of this endorsement settled around Anna like a cloak. If old Billy, who read people with the same instinctive accuracy he read the weather, trusted Jim, then perhaps her own growing feelings weren't the product of foolish romantic thinking but of genuine recognition of character. "You stay or you go?" old Billy asked, his question cutting directly to the heart of Anna's internal struggle. I don't know," Anna admitted, the first time she had spoken this uncertainty aloud. Old Billy nodded as if this was exactly the answer he had expected. "Land decides," he said simply. "Land knows what it needs. You listen, you know too." That evening, Anna sat on the small porch of a cottage as the sun painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. Her departure date loomed closer with each sunset, and she could feel the weight of decision settling around her like the evening dust. Tomorrow, she would need to send her final confirmation to the Mission Society. Her bags were already mostly packed, her few local responsibilities nearly concluded. But her heart, Her heart felt like it was pulling in directions she had never allowed herself to consider. The sound of approaching footsteps made her look up to see Liam walking up the path, his head in his hands and his expression carrying the weight of difficult news. "Anna," he said, settling onto the porch step beside her with the comfortable familiarity of old friendship. "I need to tell you something." Anna's pulse quickened. "About the escaped convict?" "About Jim Sullivan." Liam's use of the name told Anna immediately that he knew more than he had revealed before. "I did some checking, sent some telegrams to Sydney, asked some questions that probably made people uncomfortable." Anna waited, her hands folded carefully in her lap. The evidence against him was thin. Liam continued. Real thin. And the timing. 3 other Irish workers were let go from the same project right before the money went missing. Convenient scapegoating, if you ask me. "Why are you telling me this?" Anna asked quietly. Liam was silent for a long moment, staring out at the horizon where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Because I think you already know where he is. And because..." He paused, the weight of unspoken feelings heavy in the evening air. "Because I think you care about him." The honesty in Liam's voice made Anna's chest tighten. "Liam, I'm not asking you to explain anything," he said quickly. "I'm just saying, if he's a man I think he might be, if he's innocent of what they're accusing him of, then maybe he deserves a chance to prove it properly." Anna looked at this good man who was offering to help the person she was falling in love with, knowing it would mean watching her slip away from any possibility of a future together. The nobility in Liam's gesture was almost overwhelming. "There's more," Liam continued. "There's a circuit judge coming through in 2 weeks. If Sullivan wanted to surrender voluntarily, present his case properly instead of running, I could guarantee safe conduct. Make sure he gets a fair hearing." 2 weeks. 2 weeks beyond Anna's departure date. Would you tell him? Liam asked, "If you happen to see him." Anna nodded, not trusting her voice. After Liam left, Anna sat on a porch as the Outback settled into its nighttime stillness. Somewhere out there, Jim was probably watching the same stars, carrying the same uncertainty about the future. The choice she faced was becoming clearer and more complicated with each passing day. She could leave as planned, carrying her feelings for Jim like a beautiful secret, or she could stay and face the unknown consequences of choosing love over duty for the first time in her carefully ordered life. The night wind carried the scent of eucalyptus and dust, of a land that demanded honesty from those who chose to call it home. Anna closed her eyes and tried to imagine herself boarding the ship for Papua New Guinea, tried to summon the excitement and sense of purpose that had sustained her for so long. But all she could see was a pair of honest gray-blue eyes and a man who said please like it still mattered, even when the world had given him every reason to stop believing in courtesy and kindness. The land would decide, old Billy had said, but Anna was beginning to understand that the land was speaking through her heart, and what it was telling her would require more courage than any mission posting ever had. 8 days until departure. But for the first time since arriving in the Outback, Anna was beginning to hope that departure might not be inevitable after all. Chapter 3. The Convergence of Hearts. The 8th morning dawned with an ominous stillness that seemed to press against Anna's skin as she made her way to the well. The sky held the peculiar yellow tinge that old Billy had taught her meant a dust storm was coming. Not today, perhaps, but soon. Weather in the Outback, like everything else, demanded respect and preparation. Jim was waiting in the grove as always, but something in his posture told Anna immediately that this morning would be different. He stood rather than sat, his chained hands held carefully in front of him, his expression holding the weight of difficult decisions. "Anna," he said as she approached, her name carrying more gravity than usual. "We need to talk." She set down her buckets and faced him directly. "Liam spoke to you." It wasn't a question. Jim's slight smile confirmed what Anna had already guessed, that Liam had found a way to make contact, to offer his proposition about the circuit judge and voluntary surrender. "Good man," Jim said simply. "Better than I deserved, considering." "Considering what?" "That he's half in love with you himself." The directness of the statement made Anna's breath catch. "Jim, it's all right," Jim said gently. "I can see why he would be. I can also see why you don't return it, and I can see that it causes you pain not to be able to." Anna looked at this man who read her so clearly, who understood the complex weight of being cared for by someone good and worthy whom you simply couldn't love in return. "It does cause me pain. Liam deserves better. He deserves someone who can love him completely," Jim agreed, "just as you deserve the same." The words hung in the morning air between them, carrying implications that made Anna's heart race. Before she could respond, Jim continued, "I've been thinking about his offer, about surrendering, facing trial properly. And I think he's right. Running solves nothing. I'll spend my life looking over my shoulder, and you—" He paused, his gray-blue eyes searching her face. "You'll spend your life wondering what might have happened if I'd stayed and fought for the truth." Anna felt something cold settle in her stomach. Today, this afternoon, if I'm going to do this, it needs to be before word spreads that I'm in the area. Liam thinks he can contain the situation if I come involuntarily, but if a posse gets organized first. The unfinished sentence carried too many dark possibilities. Anna moved closer, close enough to see the fine lines around Jim's eyes, close enough to catch the scent of eucalyptus and honest sweat that had become associated in her mind with safety and attraction in equal measure. "There's something else," she said. "Something I need to tell you." Jim waited with a patience she had come to recognize as one of his most endearing qualities. "I was supposed to leave for Papua New Guinea tomorrow," Anna said, the words feeling strange in her mouth. "I've been preparing for this assignment for months." Jim's face didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or a kind of pain he was trying to hide. "That's quite an opportunity. Important work." "Yes," Anna agreed. "It is. But—" The simple question opened a space for Anna to step into honesty. "But I find myself questioning everything I thought I knew about what I wanted from life." Jim studied her face with the careful attention of a man who had learned not to assume too much, not to hope for more than was realistic. "Because of me?" "Because of you," Anna confirmed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Because somewhere in the past 2 weeks, I discovered that duty and desire don't have to be enemies. That maybe, sometimes, love can be its own kind of purpose." The words, once spoken, seemed to shimmer in the air between them like heat waves. Jim stepped closer, close enough that Anna could see her own reflection in his eyes. "Anna," he said quietly, "I'm a man in chains facing false charges. I have no money, no prospects, no certainty about anything beyond the next few hours. I can't ask you to give up a noble calling for someone like me." "You're not asking," Anna replied. "I'm choosing." The kiss, when it came, was gentle and certain and tasted like morning dust and possibility. Jim's chained hands framed Anna's face carefully, as if she was something precious that might break, and Anna understood that this moment of honest connection, was what she had been searching for without knowing it in all her years of dedicated service to others. When they separated, Jim rested his forehead against hers. "What happens now?" "Now you go to Liam," Anna said. "You tell the truth and trust in justice. And you? I write a letter to the Mission Society explaining that I won't be continuing to Papua New Guinea after all." The magnitude of this decision settled around them both. Anna was not just choosing love over duty. She was choosing uncertainty over security, possibility over guarantee, the unknown territory of a heart over the mapped routes of noble service. "Are you sure?" Jim asked. Anna thought of old Billy's words about listening to the land, about trusting what the heart knew even when the mind counseled caution. "I'm sure." They spent the rest of the morning talking quietly about practical things, where Jim would surrender to Liam, how Anna would handle the questions that would surely come, what they would do if the trial went badly. But underneath the practical planning ran a current of something deeper, the recognition that they had found in each other a kind of partnership that honored both their individual strengths and their shared vulnerabilities. It was just afternoon when the dust clouds on the horizon resolved themselves into a group of riders approaching fast. Anna felt Jim tense beside her as they counted the figures. 6 men, riding hard, with a purposeful urgency of a posse following a trail. "They found me," Jim said quietly, his hand automatically reaching for Anna's. "Someone must have seen us, put pieces together." Anna's mind raced. They were too far from town for Jim to reach Liam's protection, too exposed in the grove to hide effectively. The riders would be upon them within minutes. "They," Anna said, pointing to a cluster of rocks about 50 yards away. "Can you make it?" Jim looked at the terrain, calculating distances and possibilities with a quick assessment of someone who had spent weeks evading capture. "Maybe, but Anna, if they find you here." "They won't," Anna said with more confidence than she felt. "Go. Now." Jim hesitated for one crucial moment, torn between self-preservation and reluctance to leave Anna alone to face whatever questions would come. That moment of hesitation cost him the head start he needed. The posse crested the small rise that had hidden their approach, led by a man Anna recognized as Deputy Marshal Crawford from the regional office. His hard face and suspicious eyes swept the grove with practiced efficiency, and Anna knew immediately that this was not going to end with reasonable conversation and voluntary surrender. "Miss Dubois," Crawford called out, reining in his horse 20 yards away. "Fancy meeting you out here." Anna arranged her skirts calmly and picked up her water buckets as if this were any ordinary morning. "Deputy Marshal, I was just collecting water for the day." "Is that so?" Crawford's voice held the flat skepticism of someone who had already decided on guilt and was merely going through the motions of investigation. "Wouldn't happen to have seen a man around here, would you? Irish fellow, about 40, probably armed and dangerous." "I've seen no one dangerous," Anna replied, which was perfectly true from her perspective. Crawford dismounted, his hand resting casually on his sidearm. "Search the area," he told his men. "Sullivan's here somewhere. I can feel it." Anna watched with carefully controlled expression as the men began to spread out through the grove. Jim's hiding place among the rocks might buy him a few minutes, but against 6 determined searches, discovery was inevitable. It was then that salvation appeared from an unexpected quarter. Liam Fraser rode into the clearing like a man who belonged there, his bay mare moving with the easy confidence of someone who knew every inch of this territory. His presence immediately changed the dynamic of the situation, and Anna saw Crawford's expression shift from predatory satisfaction to grudging respect. "Crawford," Liam said, his voice carrying the authority of someone speaking on his own territory. "Didn't expect to see you out here today." "Fraser." Crawford's greeting was polite but wary. "We are tracking an escaped convict. Got word he might be in your area." "Jim Sullivan," Liam said, as if this were news to him. "Yeah, I heard you were looking for him. Any luck?" "Matter of fact, we think he's been getting help from someone local." Crawford's eyes flicked meaningfully toward Anna. "Someone's been bringing him food, water, taking quite a risk for a dangerous criminal." Anna felt the weight of implied accusation but kept her expression neutral. It was Liam who responded, his voice carrying a note of dry humor. "Well now, Crawford, if I was a betting man, and I'm not, mind you, being a respectable citizen and all, but if I was, I bet that anyone helping Sullivan probably has good reason to think he's not the villain you're painting him to be." Crawford's face darkened. "You questioning my authority, Fraser?" "Not at all," Liam replied smoothly. "Just saying that folks around here tend to be pretty good judges of character. If someone's been helping Sullivan, might be worth asking why before you start throwing accusations around." The standoff stretched taut between them, 2 men representing different approaches to justice and authority. Anna realized she was holding her breath, watching a careful dance of power and diplomacy that could determine not just Jim's fate but her own. It was the sound of approaching hoofbeats that broke the tension. Old Billy appeared on the ridge above them, mounted on a paint horse that seemed to float across the rough ground. Behind him rode 2 younger Aboriginal men, their presence adding another layer of complexity to an already charged situation. "Trouble?" Old Billy asked, His question directed to Liam, but his eyes taking in the entire scene with sharp intelligence. "Just a misunderstanding," Liam replied. "Deputy Marshal Crawford here is looking for someone." Old Billy's gaze settled on Crawford with the kind of assessment that seemed to see right through surface appearances to the character beneath. "Chain man," he said finally. Crawford straightened. "You've seen him?" "Seen him," Old Billy confirmed. "Good man. Help people. No steal. No hurt anyone." He paused, then added with quiet dignity, "White man law not always same as true law." The simple statement hung in the air like a challenge to everything Crawford represented. Anna saw the deputy marshal's jaw tighten as he processed the implications of having respected local Aboriginal leaders vouching for the man he was hunting. Nevertheless, Crawford said stiffly, "His escaped lawful custody and needs to be returned." "Agreed," Liam said, surprising everyone. "But he needs to be returned alive and unharmed. And he needs to get a fair hearing about those charges." Crawford studied Liam's face, clearly calculating the political ramifications of confronting a well-respected local leader in front of witnesses. "You know where he is, Fraser?" "I might," Liam admitted, "but I'd need your word that this ends with Sullivan in a cell, not in the ground." "You're in no position to negotiate terms," Crawford replied, but his tone had lost some of its earlier certainty. It was then that Jim Sullivan stepped out from behind the rocks where he had been hiding, his chained hands held clearly visible, his posture straight and dignified despite his circumstances. "No need to negotiate anything," Jim said calmly. "I surrender myself voluntarily to Deputy Marshal Crawford's custody." The clearing fell silent except for the soft sound of horses shifting and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. Jim walked slowly toward the group, each step deliberate and measured, his gray-blue eyes fixed on Crawford's face. "James Sullivan," he said formally, "I surrender myself and request transport to face the charges against me in a proper court of law." Crawford looked around the clearing, taking in the faces watching him. Anna with a careful composure, Liam with his quiet authority, Old Billy with his dignified challenge to white man's justice. This was not how he had envisioned his capture ending. "James Sullivan," Crawford said finally, "you're under arrest for theft and assault. You'll be transported to Brisbane to await trial." As the deputy marshal moved to secure Jim's existing chains with additional restraints, Anna felt her heart breaking and soaring simultaneously. Jim was alive, unharmed, and would face his accusers in a proper courtroom. But he was also being taken away from her, possibly forever, and she had no way of knowing when or if she would see him again. Jim's eyes found hers across the clearing, and in them she saw love and gratitude, and a kind of peace that came from having made the right choice regardless of its cost. He mouthed a single word, "Wait!" and Anna nodded, understanding that this was not an ending but a postponement of their beginning. As the posse prepared to depart with their prisoner, Liam approached Anna with quiet steps. "The circuit judge I mentioned," he said softly, "is a fair man. Known him for years. If the evidence is as thin as I think it is, if Sullivan tells his story well." "How long?" Anna asked. 6 weeks, maybe 8 for a full trial and resolution." Liam paused, then added gently, "That's a long time to wait for someone you've known 2 weeks." Anna looked at him, this good man who was offering her hope for a future with another man, and felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Liam, You don't need to explain," he said. "I can see it in your face when you look at him. Same way Sarah used to look at me." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "I hope he deserves it." "He does," Anna said with quiet certainty, as the dust cloud of the departing posse faded into the afternoon heat. Anna stood in the grove where she had first offered water to a stranger in chains. The outback stretched around her, vast and patient and full of possibilities. She was only beginning to understand. Old Billy approached on foot, having sent his horse and companions away. "Chain man, he come back," the elder said with a kind of certainty that came from reading patterns invisible to others. Land not finished with him yet. Not finished with you either. Anna nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle into her bones like the desert dust that became part of everything it touched. What do I do while I wait? She asked. Old Billy smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. You learn to belong here. Learn what land needs from you. When Chain Man come back, you be ready. That evening, Anna sat at a small wooden table and began composing 2 letters. The first was to the Presbyterian Mission Society, explaining that due to unforeseen circumstances, she would not be able to accept the Papua New Guinea assignment. She wrote carefully, professionally, giving no detail but making her decision clear and final. The second letter was harder. It was addressed to Jim Sullivan, care of the Brisbane courthouse, and in it she poured out everything she hadn't been able to say in their stolen moments in the Grove. She wrote about choosing to stay, about learning to read the signs of the Outback, about the school she wanted to start, not tied to any church or mission society, but born from her own vision of what education could mean in this harsh and beautiful place. I will wait, she wrote in a careful script, not because waiting is noble or romantic, but because what we've found together is worth fighting for. Come back to me when you can, and we'll build something beautiful in this place that demands truth from everyone who chooses to call it home. The night wind carried the scent of coming rain, the first she had smelled since arriving in the Outback. Change was coming, Anna realized. For the land, for herself, for the fragile beginning of love she and Jim had discovered in the most unlikely of circumstances. 6 to 8 weeks. Anna smiled as she sealed the letters, already planning how she would use that time to become the woman Jim would find when he returned. Not the dutiful missionary who had arrived in Australia, but someone new. Someone who belonged to this place and could build a future worthy of the love they had found together. Chapter 4. The Architecture of Belonging. The weeks that followed Jim's surrender moved with the strange elasticity of time that characterized life in the Outback, simultaneously crawling and racing, each day heavy with anticipation while the larger pattern of change unfolded with geological patience. Anna threw herself into the work of becoming, and discovered that transforming oneself required both the patience of a teacher and the faith of a pioneer. Her first step was practical, securing permission to remain in her cottage beyond the original mission assignment. This required delicate negotiations with both the church authorities and the local land office, complicated by a need to explain her change of plans without revealing too much about her reasons. Anna found herself drawing on diplomatic skills she hadn't realized she possessed, crafting explanations that were truthful without being complete. I've come to believe, she wrote to the mission board, that my calling lies in establishing independent educational opportunities in underserved communities. The Australian Outback presents unique challenges and opportunities that align with my skills and passion for literacy work. It was a careful dance around the truth, but it served its purpose. Within 3 weeks, Anna had secured a lease on a cottage and begun laying the groundwork for something unprecedented in Millfield, a school that belonged to the community itself rather than to any outside organization. The idea took shape gradually, growing from conversations with parents who wanted their children to read but couldn't afford to send them to the coastal cities for proper schooling. Anna envisioned something flexible and practical, classes that work around farming seasons and family needs, instruction that honored both European learning and indigenous knowledge, a place where education meant empowerment rather than displacement from local culture. Old Billy became her first unofficial advisor, teaching her about the rhythms of the land and the protocols of respectful interaction with Aboriginal families who might consider sending their children to learn alongside the settler kids. It was from him that Anna learned about the complex political landscape of the region, which families held real influence, which grudges needed navigating, which dreams might be possible if approached with sufficient patience and skill. School is good, Old Billy told her one morning as they watched the sunrise paint the distant hills in shades of rose and gold. But school that respects all knowledge, that's better. White learning and black learning, they both got power when they worked together. Anna had been thinking along similar lines, imagining lessons that incorporated practical skills like reading weather signs and understanding native plant medicine alongside traditional academic subjects. It was ambitious, potentially controversial, and exactly the kind of challenge that made her heart race with excitement rather than anxiety. The project also provided a welcome distraction from the ache of missing Jim. Letters arrived sporadically from Brisbane, brief notes that had clearly been read by authorities before reaching her, but still carrying enough of Jim's voice to sustain her hope. The trial was proceeding slowly, as legal proceedings did, but Liam's contact suggested that the prosecution's case was indeed as weak as they had hoped. The truth has a way of surfacing, Liam told Anna one evening as they worked together to repair the roof of what will become the schoolhouse, especially when there are people willing to dig for it. Liam had become Anna's most stalwart supporter in the school project, contributing both labor and his considerable influence in the community. His motivations were complex: genuine belief in Anna's vision, respect for her dedication, and perhaps a kind of noble love that found expression in helping her build the life she wanted, even if it was a life that wouldn't include him as she might have hoped. "You know," he said as they hammered in new shingles, "I never thought I'd be helping to build a schoolhouse for the woman I—" He paused, then continued with characteristic directness. "Well, for the woman who's waiting for another man to come home." Anna stopped working and looked at him directly. "Liam, if things were different." "They are not different," he said gently. "And that's all right. Some loves are meant to be lived, and some are meant to teach us what love looks like. I'm learning to be grateful for both kinds." The generosity in his words made Anna's throat tighten with emotion. "You're a good man, Liam Fraser." "I'm trying to be," he replied, "and part of that means helping you build something beautiful here, regardless of my own feelings about it." By the 6th week, the schoolhouse was nearly ready and Anna had commitments from 12 families to send their children for lessons. The building itself was simple but sturdy, one large room with good light, benches that could be moved to accommodate different activities, shelves for the books Anna had been ordering from Sydney with her carefully saved wages. Most importantly, it felt like a space that belonged to the community rather than being imposed upon it. It was during the 7th week that the news arrived. Anna was organizing primers and slates when she heard the sound of a horse approaching at speed. Through the schoolhouse window, she saw Liam riding hard, his face carrying the kind of news that couldn't wait for ordinary social protocols. "Anna," he called out as he swung down from his horse. "Telegram from Brisbane." Anna's hand still on the book she had been arranging. "Jim." "Acquitted," Liam said, his voice carrying relief and something that might have been joy. "All charges dismissed. The real thief confessed. Some clerk who'd been skimming from multiple projects. Jim's been cleared completely." The room seemed to spin slightly around Anna as the news settled into her consciousness. Acquitted, cleared, free to come home. When? She managed to ask. Should be on tomorrow's coach, if he caught the afternoon departure from Brisbane. Tomorrow, after 7 weeks of letters and waiting and building a life around hope, Jim would be back tomorrow. Anna sank onto one of the new benches, overwhelmed by the magnitude of relief and anticipation flooding through her. Liam sat beside her, his presence steady and comforting. "You ready for this?" he asked gently. Anna thought about the question seriously. Was she ready? She had spent 7 weeks learning to belong to this place, to these people, to a vision of education that honored multiple ways of knowing. She had built something meaningful from nothing, had discovered strength she hadn't known she possessed, had become someone who could stand as an equal partner rather than just a devoted admirer. "Yes," she said finally, "I think I am." The next afternoon, Anna stood outside the general store where the weekly coach made its stop, wearing her best dress and carrying 7 weeks' worth of accumulated hope and nervous energy. Half the town seemed to have found reasons to be nearby. Word of Jim's return and vindication had spread quickly through Millfield's efficient gossip network. Old Billy appeared beside her with his characteristic ability to materialize from the landscape itself. "Chain man coming home. he said with satisfaction. Land kept him, like it keep you. Now you both belong here proper. Anna nodded, understanding that this was more than personal victory. It was a kind of acceptance by the place itself, a recognition that she and Jim had passed some test that went beyond legal proceedings or social approval. The coach appeared as a dust cloud on the horizon, gradually resolving into horses and wheels and the promise of reunion. As it drew closer, Anna could see a familiar figure among the passengers, and her heart began beating with a rhythm that felt like drums announcing celebration. Jim stepped down from the coach wearing clean clothes and carrying a small bundle of belongings, his movements free of the careful constraints that had characterized all their previous meetings. His wrist bore the pale marks of chains, but the chains themselves were gone forever. Their eyes met across the dusty street, and Anna saw in Jim's face the same mixture of relief and joy and incredulous gratitude that she felt flooding through her own chest. He walked toward her slowly, as if afraid that moving too quickly might break the spell of this moment. Anna, he said when he reached her, her name carrying the weight of 7 weeks' worth of longing and letters and faith in each other. Welcome home, she replied, and felt the truth of those words settle around them both like a blessing. The kiss that followed was different from their first, deeper, more certain, carrying the knowledge that they had both chosen this love despite obstacles and waited for it despite uncertainty. When they separated, Jim's hands framed Anna's face with the gentle reverence of someone touching something precious and long desired. I got your letters, he said softly. All of them. They kept me sane through the whole ordeal. And now? Anna asked. Now we build the life you described, Jim replied. Together, around them, the community of Millfield watched with the satisfaction of people who had witnessed something rare and worth celebrating. Liam stepped forward to clasp Jim's hand in congratulations, his gesture carrying the grace of a man who had found peace with his own sacrifices. Old Billy nodded approvingly, as if the outcome had always been inevitable to anyone with eyes to see. That evening, as the sun set over the schoolhouse that would open its doors in 2 weeks, Anna and Jim sat together on the porch of a cottage, their cottage now, and talked about the future they would create together. Jim had ideas about carpentry projects that could benefit the school, about ways his construction experience might help other families improve their homes and prospects. Anna described her vision for education that honored different kinds of wisdom, for a community institution that could grow and adapt to serve real needs. It won't be easy, Anna said, leaning against Jim's shoulder as the stars began appearing in the vast outback sky. Nothing worthwhile ever is, Jim replied, his arm tightening around her. But we'll have each other, and we'll have this place that's claimed us both. That seems like enough to build a lifetime on. Anna thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment, her choice to leave France rather than accept an arranged marriage, his false imprisonment and escape, their meeting at the well that had changed everything for both of them. The path had been neither straight nor easy, but it had led them to exactly where they belonged. I love you, Jim Sullivan, she said into the desert darkness. And I love you, Anna Dubois, he replied, soon to be Anna Sullivan, if you'll have me. I'll have you, Anna said, smiling at the stars. I'll have you in this life, and whatever challenges come with both. The night wind carried the scent of eucalyptus and the promise of rain, of growth and change and new beginnings taking root in ancient soil. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird called, perhaps celebrating, or perhaps simply acknowledging the beautiful complexity of hearts that had found their way home to each other despite every reason to believe such happiness was impossible. Anna closed her eyes and listened to the vast quiet of the outback, understanding finally what old Billy had meant about the land deciding what it needed. The land had needed a school and a love story, and two people willing to build something meaningful together. It had tested them both, strip away everything unnecessary, and then given them exactly what they needed to create a life worth living. In 2 weeks, the school would open with 13 students and ambitious plans for the future. In 3 weeks, Anna and Jim would exchange vows in a ceremony that honored both settler traditions and Aboriginal blessings. In the years to come, They would build a family and a community institution that served the Outback's unique needs for education that respected both innovation and tradition. But tonight, it was enough to sit together under the Southern Cross and know that love, patient, tested, and freely chosen, had proven stronger than duty, fear, and the thousands of small obstacles that tried to keep hearts from finding their way home to each other. The Outback had given them not what they had expected, but exactly what they needed. And that, Anna thought as sleep began to claim her, was perhaps the most beautiful gift any love story could ask for. Epilogue, Letters to the Future. 5 years later, Anna Sullivan sat at a writing desk in the expanded cottage that had grown to accommodate their family, 2-year-old Sarah sleeping in a crib, baby James gurgling contentedly in his bassinet. Outside, she could hear Jim's voice mingling with those of older students as he taught practical carpentry skills in the workshop that had become an essential part of the school's curriculum. The letter she was writing was addressed to her sister Marie in France, part of their regular correspondence that had resumed after Anna's dramatic change of life plans. But today's letter felt different, more reflective, carrying the weight of someone who had lived through transformation and wanted to share what she had learned. My dearest Marie, she wrote in a careful French script, you asked in your last letter whether I ever regret the choices I made, leaving the mission work, staying in this remote place, marrying a man I had known for only 2 weeks when I first decided to build a life with him. It is a fair question, and one I have asked myself many times over the past 5 years. The answer is complex, as honest answers usually are. There have been moments of difficulty, times when the isolation felt overwhelming, when the challenges of building something new seemed insurmountable, when I wondered whether I had been foolish to abandon a clearly defined path for something so uncertain. But regret? No, Marie. I feel no regret. What I feel instead is gratitude. For the morning I went to fetch water and found Jim by the well. For the courage to listen to my heart despite years of training to ignore it. For old Billy's wisdom about letting the land decide what it needs. For Liam's generous friendship and support even when it cost him personal happiness. Our school now serves 43 students, ranging in age from 5 to 62. Yes, we have grandmothers learning to read alongside children, Aboriginal elders teaching plant medicine alongside European literature, former miners discovering that education can open doors they never knew existed. It is chaotic and beautiful and exactly what this place needed. Jim has become not just my husband but my true partner in every sense. Sharing the work of teaching, contributing his practical skills to our educational vision, bringing the kind of gentle strength to our community that comes from someone who has been tested and emerged with his integrity intact. We have built something here that belongs to this place and these people in ways the original mission posting never could have achieved. It is smaller in scope, perhaps, than what I might have accomplished in Papua New Guinea, but it is deeper, rooted in real relationships and genuine understanding of local needs. The children we teach will grow up to build better lives for themselves and their families. Some will leave the Outback for opportunities in the cities, carrying with them both the practical skills and cultural wisdom they learned here. Others will stay and continue developing this remote corner of the world into something richer and more sustainable than it was when we arrived. Is this the life I planned? Certainly not. Is it the life I needed? Absolutely. The Outback taught me that love, whether for a person, a place, or a purpose, requires the courage to release control and trust in possibilities we cannot fully foresee. When I chose to stay for Jim, I thought I was choosing romantic love over duty. What I discovered was that true love encompasses duty, but a duty chosen freely rather than imposed from outside. My work here matters as much as any mission posting could have, but it matters in ways that honor who I am rather than asking me to become someone else. Jim and I have created a partnership that makes us both stronger, and our children will grow up understanding that love means supporting each other's dreams rather than asking anyone to sacrifice their authentic self. Sometimes, in the evenings when the work is done and our small family is gathered on the porch, I look out at this landscape that once seemed so harsh and foreign. Now I see home, not just the place where I live, but the place that shaped me into who I was meant to become. The woman who writes to you now is different from the dutiful daughter who left France to serve in foreign missions. She is more confident, more creative, more capable of building something from nothing. She knows her own mind and heart, and she has learned to trust both. If you ever find yourself standing at a crossroad between the life you planned and the life your heart whispers might be possible, I hope you will remember your sister who chose the whisper and found it led to exactly where she belonged. With all my love and hope for your own beautiful journey, Anna. As she sealed the letter, Anna could hear Sarah beginning to wake from a nap, her small voice calling for Mama with the imperious demand of a 2-year-old who knew herself to be deeply loved. Through the window, she saw Jim walking toward the house with their oldest student, 17-year-old Thomas, both of them discussing some carpentry technique with the absorbed attention of craftsmen sharing knowledge. This life, built from a moment of unexpected meeting, sustained through trial and separation, fulfilled through daily choices to love and build and serve, had become more beautiful than any dream Anna could have conjured during her dutiful years in France. The Outback stretched around them, vast and patient, and full of the continuing stories of people who came here to disappear or to find something they had lost elsewhere. Anna and Jim had found each other, and in doing so had discovered how to belong to a place that demanded honesty and rewarded those brave enough to build something lasting from love and hope and the daily commitment to serve others. As she went to tend to her daughter and prepare for another evening of family life in the place she now called home, Anna smiled at the thought of her letter traveling across oceans to reach her sister. Perhaps Marie would read it and understand that some gambles were worth taking, some loves worth waiting for, some changes worth the courage they required. The sun was setting over the school where tomorrow would bring new lessons, new challenges, new opportunities to help others discover their own capabilities and dreams. This evening would bring Jim's laughter, the children's bedtime stories, and the peaceful satisfaction of a day well spent in service of something larger than herself. It was a good life, Anna thought, different from anything she had planned, and perfect in its unexpected completeness. Thank you for joining Anna and Jim on their journey through the Australian Outback, where love proved stronger than duty, and belonging came to those brave enough to listen to their hearts. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful paths are the ones we never saw coming. Have you ever had to choose between love and purpose? Or perhaps you found, like Anna did, that sometimes they're not opposites at all, that the deepest love can become its own kind of purpose. Tell us your story in the comments below. Your voice may inspire someone else who's standing at their own crossroads today. If this story touched your heart, please give a like and subscribe for more tales of courage, love, and the beautiful complexity of human hearts finding their way home to each other. There are so many more stories waiting to be told, and I'd be honored to share them with you. Until next time, may you have the courage to trust the whispers of your own heart and the wisdom to recognize love when it appears, even if it comes wearing chains and asking for water on an ordinary morning that turns out to be the beginning of everything beautiful in your life.